Let's talk about World War III. How do you think the Western nations are going to fill the ranks of their languishing militaries? Well, there's only two options. They can do a military draft or they can recruit immigrants. Citizenship via the pathway of compulsory service. Naturalization via conscription. That's the name of the game. Which of these two options do you think they're going to employ? And which of those two options do you think the population is going to be in favor of? Well, it's actually a trick question. The answer is both. However, they're going to exhaust the immigration card, the immigrant volunteerism card first. Now, a lot of people are politicizing this, and I'm going to try to enlighten you because 2 years ago I told you this exact thing would happen. It seemed self-evident to me at the time. The only solution, aside a military draft, which not a lot of people are going to go for at first, and when this immigrant recruitment drive, if and when it fails, then they'll have a justification to reinstate compulsory service in many Western nations. Now, this is already policy in Canada. The news just broke last week when the immigration minister indicated that this indeed is going to be a fast-track pathway to citizenship for people who have the necessary skill sets and the people who have security clearance in order to become citizens. Serve in the military and you can become a Canadian citizen. Okay, so let's talk about the issues that a lot of people are going to have with this. How did I know that this was going to happen? Again, it was just self-evident at the time. Admittedly, I kind of stole the idea from Starship Troopers, where the explicit premise in the film was citizenship is guaranteed via military service. This is something that was practiced by Roman auxiliary forces, the French Foreign Legions, the Russians are doing it, the Ukrainians are doing it, because nobody wants to fight a war. We're living in the age of decadence. Few people are having children. We have an aging population, which is why half the people you see on the front lines in Ukraine and Russia have gray hair. There is low confidence in government. People are not physically fit. They're not meeting the enlistment standards, either mentally or physically. It's typically a low-paying job. And why would you go join the military when you can get rich on shit coins and OnlyFans? Okay, war racketeering, there's no moral imperative, there's no great war at this point in time. They're working on that and it's coming, but at this point in time, people have very little incentive to join the military. So the only other option they have to exhaust before they force us onto the front lines is to look at immigration and compulsory service. So there are certain benefits, I want to say right from the get-go, that I think compulsory service could actually have for individuals in this society who need a little bit of regimentation in their life. It breeds discipline, accountability. There's obvious health benefits. If you have to meet certain physical criteria, you develop survival skills. There's values of just loyalty that can be instilled within you, barring all the, propaganda and everything that goes along with it and the brainwashing and indoctrination. There still are some benefits that I think could help stabilize a lot of people, if only just delaying gratification and getting people away from their screens for a certain period of time. But I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen is this is going to be heavily politicized. Now, in Canada, as I indicated, the immigration minister indicated that this is now going to be policy, okay? And it's being mulled in Europe right now, that in think tanks they're talking about how they can supplement their soon-to-be compulsory service that they're going to be reinstating soon with this fast-track pathway to citizenship for immigrants. A lot of people are politicizing this, though. They're of the assumption that these immigrants are going to be used to subjugate the greater population, and because they lack the cultural affinity with our countrymen, that they will be leveraged in order to subordinate us to all manner of tyranny. Well, here's a reality check with respect to that. Okay, it wasn't immigrants who locked us down for a couple years and forced medical interventions. It wasn't immigrants who froze bank accounts, throttled the internet, controlled the media, sold off all our gold here in Canada, if you can believe that, when it was at the bottom, massacred all the ostriches, regulated pretty much every aspect of our life down to the smart meter, and of course will be used to confiscate our guns. So we don't need immigrants to coerce ourselves. We do a sufficient job of that just fine. In fact, in the Stanley Milgram experiments, the obedience to authority experiments, they found that 50% of people in even the worst of conditions, meaning the least favorable for a person to be obedient, would obey an order from an authority figure to essentially murder somebody if they didn't have to take responsibility. In some cases, it was up to 90% compliance. So there is no shortage of yes men who are willing to just follow orders. Okay, so get this notion out of your head that these people are going to be used to police us as a domestic population. We're going to do that just fine. Now, a lot of people look at our public safety minister, Gary, a guy I can't pronounce his last name, and say, look, he's an immigrant. He's coming to take the guns. Are they hiding behind that sort of racial tokenism, using it as a shield of sorts so that they can play the race card whenever you criticize the policies? Maybe that's a factor in it. Maybe it is. I'm not going to say it isn't at all. But by and large, they don't need to do that because we're all compliant. People will just roll over, especially in this country. So this is historically precedented. They're going to do it. It's not political. It's because they've ran out of options. And once they expend the immigrant compulsory service card, that is when they're going to bring in the martial law, or not the martial law, the military draft, and the martial law probably as well. Okay, so that's how this is going to go. I mean, you could see it coming from a mile away. I told you this was going to happen, and now it is commonplace, and everybody is talking about it. It is in vogue. So the immigration minister, Lena Diab, announced a 2026 express entry category for skilled military recruits. It is meant to attract highly skilled foreign applicants for roles tied to the Canadian Armed Forces. Examples will include doctors, nurses, and pilots. But I'm quite certain that that category is going to be broadened quite a bit. Oh, you worked in culinary arts? You worked at a McDonald's once? Okay, you're in, right? Because again, compulsory service is something which doesn't just cover the military. When they need to turn on the war machine, they're going to need a lot of Rosie the Riveters. They're going to need people to work in the factories. And I would encourage you to go and watch my video on the Canadian Prepper channel where I talk about the World War III military draft. It's not what you think it's going to be. It is a very broad. I think, in fact, the tip of the iceberg is going to be actual recruitment for the military. The bulk of the people who are mandated as essential workers, and we've seen this happen before, in fact, where unions have been forced to work because they're deemed essential, and we all know about that essential designation and how it was employed throughout the pandemic to consolidate power in the hands of a few transnational corporations. But I digress. Well, we are going to absolutely see a situation in which the definition of compulsory service is broadened to encompass all aspects of society. So can you farm? Can you perform certain work on critical infrastructure? Essential, okay? And you'll be paid a fixed wage if paid at all. If it comes down to a full-blown war, which they're trying to get us into, while they try to confiscate all of our firearms here in Canada, they're giving billions of dollars to the Ukrainians, and now they're going to try to give our confiscated firearms to Ukraine so they can send those back to the drug cartels in Mexico. How does that sound to you? Is anybody in this compliant, obedient society going to resist? Fuck no, we won't. We will just wait for shit to happen and then complain about it until we're left with nothing but muskets and slingshots. And it's really pathetic at this point in time. You know, I'm looking at this Iranian situation. I'm going to go off the rails here. I'm looking at these Iranians, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what they're doing is pretty base. I got to say it's based AF. These guys are making a run for the fences. Every country in their right mind with a functioning brain cell would want nuclear weapons. Why would you not want nuclear? Oh, well, we want to minimize the risk. The United States, Russia, France, UK, China, all the big dogs have nuclear weapons. You think Japan, South Korea, Canada, Australia, Saudi, you think these countries don't want nuclear weapons? Of course we want nuclear weapons. We can't because we're somebody else's bitch. That's the only reason why. Nukes are the Second Amendment of the planet. And here are the Iranians making a run for it, right? They don't want to be somebody's bitch. And what do all the bitch countries say? Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's bad. We don't need more nuclear weapons. Only Israel and the United States get nuclear weapons. Fucking pathetic. We are pathetic as a nation. Obsequious little bitches is what we are. Sorry. Where was I? Anyways. And so they have to fill the ranks somehow. If you don't want them to do that, then you need to commit to a military draft. And we don't want to do that because we don't trust the government. Unfortunately, it gets wildly politicized by both sides. Okay, and I can kind of understand both arguments, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to do one of these things. Now, there's going to be some idealists out there, but why do we have to fight World War III? I mean, just shut up. I mean, it doesn't matter if we're better than that and we don't want it to happen. You can protest to your heart's content. They're going to do a false flag. The propaganda is so thick. People are so fickle. The same people who apparently elected, pretty much both, I suppose, elected a peace president who deemed the Department of Defense the War Department and is starting wars on every possible front and not ending any meaningful war anyways, or at least none that didn't start on his watch. Well, they're going to acquiesce to whatever the demands are of the MIC, military-industrial complex, and they don't seem to be putting up a whole lot of resistance to the idea of starting a full-blown war with Iran, which will have huge repercussions because, quite frankly, the majority of people are either preoccupied or stupid, and that's just a fact. It's not even that they lack the ability to grasp what's going on geopolitically. It's just they simply either don't have the time or the inclination. I understand people who don't have the time, but I have very little patience for people who don't have curiosity about how the world is worked. So don't worry about the fact that these people are not culturally aligned. I mean, we know from the Stanley Milgram experiments that the people who are anybody, it doesn't matter what race they are, what ethnicity, when it comes to obedience to authority, 50% of people will pull the trigger if they are absolved of responsibility. In the Stanley Milgram experiments, they found out that even in the worst of conditions, the ones that are most conducive and favorable to people being disobedient, people would still comply with the orders of an authority figure to pull the trigger and follow orders. In some cases, it was up to 90% of people. So that means 9 out of 10 people on the street, under the right conditions, you put them as a guard in an internment camp, and if you give them an order to pull the trigger, and don't worry, we'll take responsibility for it later, they will pull that trigger. You don't need immigrants to bring about a police tyrannical state. We've already done that. So, yes, they're going to recruit immigrants. They are going to do the military draft. World War III is on. There really is no way around it. And I just got a message from the RCMP, as did, I think, 2.3 million firearms owners. They're now claiming, as of February 20th, 2026, that 32,000 firearms have been successfully declared for every province and territory in Canada regarding the assault-style firearms compensation program. Basically, it's a gun confiscation program. It is not a compensation. It is not voluntary, but they want people to declare what they have on this website so they can come and kick in your doors. Apparently, at least 1.99999 million Canadians have decided that they ain't going to go for this, that they're not selling their guns. And while I cannot encourage you to do anything that would be illegal, all I can say is stay strong, brothers and sisters. We got to stay prepared because they're going to need strong-minded people like you and me when the shit hits the fan. I don't want to be burdened with this sort of thing. Unfortunately, we're going to have to be. And we're going to have to find a way to resolve this recruitment crisis. Because either way, they're going to fill the ranks somehow. Now, I do believe that there can be some benefits to compulsory service. I do believe that you can make well-rounded members of society, and if you strip away all the propaganda and the bullshit, there are a lot of benefits inherent to compulsory service. I may have discussed this, but just being accountable, being disciplined, being more physically fit, instilling values, delaying gratification, all of those things are very important and things that people, I think, would benefit from greatly, even though it would come with its fair share of inculcation into all manner of just incorrect notions about the world. Unfortunately, they're going to do both. And it's going to be politicized first. And then when they say, okay, well, you don't want the immigrants to join the military? Guess what? Here are your papers.